A Muslim sheikh just sat on an American panel, and he said what no one expected, that ex-Muslims, like the man sitting right next to him, deserve death. And he didn't flinch when pressed. This wasn't a clip from the Middle East. This was filmed in the U.S., and it might be the most honest moment you'll ever hear about the goals of political Islam.
Now, what is your biggest challenge with the religion of Islam? What's your biggest challenge with it?
You mean the biggest difficulty I see in it?
I would say the biggest difficulty, because to me, I see it from a few different places, right? One, there's faith, meaning none of us have gone to heaven to see what heaven's going to look like. We're all taking a risk. All of us here are taking a risk. Either we're all going to be right, either we're all going to be wrong, or either one of us is going to be right, meaning one group's going to be right and the other's going to be wrong. But we don't know. That's faith, that's prayer. Of course, we've had great experiences in life to say, I had a connection with God. I had a moment with ... And then that's individual to us, right? So to me, it's faith, it's religion, it's enemies, it's common enemies. It's the challenges that's going on in the world, specifically with America as being, for the longest time, the greatest country in the world. What is affecting that? And then there's a few other things that we'll talk about into as well. So, but for me, it's more from the standpoint of, when you've said you've read the Quran dozens of times, you've studied it, you've written about it, you've talked about it. Even I think the government used 2 of your books in 2011 that Wire talked about, right? I don't know what the 2 books were. I think one of them was about Prophet Muhammad, and So your background, you've been in this world. What is your biggest challenge and differences with the religion of Islam?
Well, probably the main thing is the sanctification of violence and the idea that God will bless and even calls upon the believers to commit acts of violence under certain circumstances. Like Rashid here is an ex-Muslim, and so under Islamic law, as it's traditionally and classically formulated, he would be put to death. Muhammad said, anybody who changes his religion, kill him. And it's still the position of all of the schools of Islamic jurisprudence, Sunni and Shia, that the apostate should be put to death. Now, obviously, this is not something that means that every apostate has to always go around watching himself, because you have to have somebody who's willing to do that. But those who do it, they think, well, now I have done something that Allah has commanded, and He will bless me for doing it. And me, myself, because I was standing up for the freedom of speech, 2015, Pamela Geller and I put on in Texas a Muhammad art exhibit and cartoon contest. And it was actually, we featured a lot of classic Shiite Persian art depicting Muhammad, as well as contemporary art that was from a more critical standpoint. And a couple of jihadis came from Phoenix, key members, actually, of the Islamic Community Center of Phoenix. One of them was featured in a recruitment video for them, and they tried to kill us. And so I actually would be also under a death sentence just for drawing Muhammad and for sponsoring people who do, which I did not in order to cause gratuitous insult, but to defend the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which is the foundation of any genuinely free society.
Do you think that this makes our country dangerous when we have people who are willing to kill other people who don't believe like them? That's what he's discussing about Islam now.
Daniel, what would you say to that? What's your response to that?
Yeah, so just a few points here. Number one, it's interesting how we want to talk about Islam as a religion, but the religion is 95%, like what Jake mentioned. It's about worshiping God, being devoted to a righteous way of life, loving your neighbors, taking care of your parents. That's what 95% of Islam is about.
I'm going to cut in for just 1 second to say this. Even if 99% of a religion is all about being peace and loving, but 1% is about killing people who disagree with us, that's a super, super dangerous religion.
Yes, there are criminal punishments, which we're going to discuss. There is conquest, there is war theory, there's all of this in Islam. But it's interesting how when a conversation is about Islam, we focus on that 5% instead of the 95% of what Islam is about. We don't see this kind of double standard with like Christians. So if you have someone like Matt Walsh is a traditional Christian. There's slavery in the Bible. There's punishment for blasphemers in the Bible. There's killing of heretics in the church tradition. There's no discussion of that with Matt Walsh, right? Or Ben Shapiro. There is killing of blasphemers in the Hebrew Bible. There is, punishments for apostasy in the Talmud. There's no discussion of that with Ben Shapiro. You can talk about, other values, and that's what the discussion focuses on.
Let me just explain why everyone's so concerned about Islam's 5% and no one's concerned about Judaism's 5%. I'll speak for Judaism. And that is because you never see Jews going around killing people who disagree with them. In fact, we don't even believe that someone needs to be Jewish to have a place in heaven, unique to all religions. Right? But Islam actually is going around and killing people. I can get into deeper nuances of the fact that the way the Torah and God establish capital punishment is one where it's virtually impossible to actually implement it, which is why the Talmud states that a court that actually implemented capital punishment once in 70 years was considered in the Jewish society to be a murderous court, because it was so unlikely. Because God set it up on one hand for us to understand the severity of certain things, on the other hand, making it extremely unlikely that it will be implemented. Whereas Islam is literally going and killing people. They do this every single day. If you go into the Arabic countries, this happens every single day. People are being killed for all different types of reasons. Whether it's because a woman was a little bit too revealing, whether it's because someone was raped, or whether it's because someone is a Jew. God forbid.
But the Islamophobic narrative is just lasering in on these specific topics, which is fine. We can discuss that, but I just want to note the double standard.
So, and I want to note that there is no double standard and there's no Islamophobia. There's a real phobia of people who go out and kill people, who take videos of themselves killing people, who behead people. Did you see any Jews beheading anybody? Do we have a video of Jews beheading people? Not a single one. Why? This is a culture and a religion, which makes it even more dangerous, because when it comes to a religious belief, there isn't any reasoning that can be reasoned.
So the other framing of this whole discussion that I want to put out here, though, is that I'm wondering, like, this standard of, there should be no punishment for blasphemy, for example. Let's just put that out there. There should be no punishment for mocking and insulting a religion, attacking people's values. Is that coming from a Christian perspective? Is that coming from is that coming from the church tradition? Is that coming from the Bible? Because when we look at the Bible, we see in Leviticus, we see in Deuteronomy that blasphemers should be put to death. Even if you entice, the Bible says, if you entice like your son or your daughter or your wife entices you to worship other than God, then have no mercy. Put them to death without due process mentioned, without any kind of court or tribunal. The husband or the father should just immediately put them to death without mercy. That's what the Bible says. So when Robert wants to criticize Islam, I'm wondering, is that criticism on the basis of the Bible? Is that on the basis of the church tradition? Or is this a liberal, secular, modernist critique of Islam? So I want to know, am I debating or discussing with two Christians or two atheists or two liberal secularists? Like, that's a clarification that we need.
Let me give clarification, actually, because I don't think it's going to be given here from when I listen to the response. And I already said it. And that is, first of all, the Bible is our Bible. It's the Torah, which God gave to the Jewish people. And let me be very clear about everything he just said. No, it has nothing to do with being liberal, Jews. We know exactly what the Torah says, and it is correct. Everything he quoted is correct. However, it's never implemented the way he's saying it's implemented. There are qualifications necessary, which make it very unlikely to implement, designed that way by God, so that we understand the severity, while the implementation of it is very, very unlikely. And that's the reason why we don't see Jews running around killing people, and we do see Muslims running around and killing people. And that's what makes the 5% of Islam super, super dangerous. Super dangerous, because they literally murder people.
May I?
Yes.
This is a very important clarification, and there are a couple of distinctions that have to be made. One is all of your examples from Christianity are from Old Testament law, which if you had studied Christianity, you would know there's no sect of Christianity, no school of Christian thought, no tradition within Christianity that holds that Old Testament law applies to Christians for all time. As a matter of fact, it never did apply. Even in Judaism, after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the rabbis redefined Judaism so that even they don't teach that those punishments have ongoing validity. So you're talking about something that nobody in mainstream Judaism or Christianity thinks is valid today versus something that unfortunately all too many Muslims do think is valid today. And the bringing up of ancient historical wrongdoing is all very well, and there's certainly a place for that. I've got no interest in denying any of the misdeeds of Christians throughout history. But the problem that we have in Islam is that these passages of the Quran that are problematic, passages of Muhammad's traditions that are problematic, they are still considered to be in force by very large numbers of Muslims, such that all the major terrorist groups around the world are Islamic groups. And you don't have any Christian terrorist groups saying Jesus is Lord and blowing people up. There's a reason for that. And the reasons have to do with the interpretative traditions in both religions.
Can I comment?
Go ahead,
Please.
Yeah, so I would ask Robert a very simple question that I think gets at what the real issue actually is. Do you believe that it's inherently immoral for an apostate to be put to death?
Do I believe that it's inherently immoral for an apostate to be put to death?
Is it inherently immoral?
Let me just answer this from a Jewish point of view, that it is inherently immoral to put a non-believer, an apostate, or a heretic, or whatever you want to call him, to death, unless it follows the precise guidelines that God has given us. And those guidelines are very difficult to meet.
Well, I know this is some kind of trap, but in any case,
No,
I don't
I'm just
see any
looking
reason.
for honesty on your part. That's all.
You can always have honesty on my part. Everything I tell you is the truth.
Okay, so go
and
ahead.
the fact is that, I don't know. I tell you the truth. I haven't
don't know.
thought about
Wow.
it.
Okay,
But-
you haven't thought about it. Well, you're writing
Yeah.
all of these books on Islam
how are
talking
you
about
criticizing
apostasy,
Islam?
Right.
and you don't even know if this is inherently immoral. That's quite shocking,
No,
Robert.
I would say that I don't think that it's moral to put the apostate to death.
So it's
But
immoral.
As it comes to my books about Islam, I'm just reporting on what Islamic clerics and the Islamic tradition teaches about passages like when Muhammad says, if somebody changes his religion, kill him. So
Yeah, but
if you look, for example, in chapter 4, verse 89 of the Quran, in the critical Quran, where it says, if they turn renegade, then come and kill them wherever you find them, then I give Islamic authorities who actually say that this should be done. And that is something people need to know. Now, whether you're talking about in the ideal society, you have apostates put to death, I don't think so, because I believe in the freedom of conscience and the idea that of the dignity of the human person, which is a Christian concept that's not in Islam. You have in Islam, the unbelievers are the most vile of created beings, according to
Well, one
chapter
issue at a
98,
time.
verse 6.
One issue at a time.
So on. No, this is all.
I still
let's
didn't
talk
get an
about
answer
this
if
issue.
it's-
I understand, but this
inherently
is all the
immoral?
same issue. Whereas in
Is it
Christianity,
inherently immoral?
all people are equal in dignity as made in the image of God. And so in that sense, I would say, no, I don't think it is.
So is it inherently immoral, yes or no?
Can I answer that?
It is.
It is.
So when when Deuteronomy, since you like to quote the Quran, when the Bible says this in Deuteronomy 13:6, if your brother, the son of your mother, your son of your daughter, the wife of your bosom, or your friend, who as your own soul secretly entices you, saying, quote, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known, neither you nor your fathers, of the gods of the people which are all around you, near to you or far from you, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, you shall not consent to him or listen to him, nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him or conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And you shall stone him with stones until he dies, because he sought to entice you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. So all Israel shall hear and fear, and not again do such wickedness as this among you. So
Yes.
let me finish. Let me
I get
comment
your
on the
point.
passage. So when your loving God, Jesus Christ, who you believe is God, who revealed the Old Testament and revealed this as a law for the people, and you said that it's inherent inherently immoral for the punishment of apostasy to be death, then you are charging your own God and supposedly loving Jesus with immorality,
Not
sir.
at all.
If you don't see that contradiction and hypocrisy,
It's not
then
in
we
the
can't
least.
really do much for you.
Here's what this guy doesn't understand, the Shaykh or whatever he is. What he doesn't understand is that when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, he gave us the written law, which is what he was just reading from, and he gave us the oral law. And the oral law explains the written law that ended up being written down as the Mishnah and Talmud. And this is any basic student of Torah knows this. And if you just read the commentaries of Rashi on the text itself, you will see this, that in order for this to happen, as he says, yes, it sounds very dramatic, but in order for it to happen, there has to be two witnesses who are what we're going to call kosher witnesses, whatever defines that, which is another conversation, who warn the person who is enticing right before they entice, literally right before they entice, and then the person has to commit the enticement in front of them. Right? So that the likelihood of someone to do it that way is super unlikely, which is the reason why capital punishment virtually never happened in Judaism. Yet God wants us to understand the severity of this type of a behavior. And this is what he's getting all wrong. He's getting all passionate about and excited about to justify his barbarism.
Or hypocritical, because that is God actually ordering something
Was
directly.
God wrong for that?
Now, the question here is whether the Muslims, when they put people to death for apostasy today, are likewise authorized by God in some direct manner. Now,
Oh, that's
obviously,
what matters.
yes, the question is...
And it's not inherently immoral. It just matters what is the correct religion and whether or not
Well, see-
God is actually revealing it.
Yeah, if you study the Old Testament, you will actually find that there's a great deal of discussion about passages like that and whether they are actually commands by God, whether they were understood by the faithful, interpretations by the faithful. The evolving understanding in the Old Testament and the New, and in Jewish and Christian tradition, is something that unfortunately is absent in Islam, such that in Jewish and Christian tradition you have the understanding of the dignity of the human person that ultimately made people realize that putting people to death for apostasy was not something that was acceptable. Yeah. But the idea that it was a localized command at some point or understood to be such, that is not the same thing as people nowadays thinking they are the executors of the wrath of Allah because Muhammad says if anybody changes his religion, kill him, and the Quran says that you can soothe your heart by fighting the unbelievers and so on.
So Robert,
can we hear from Brother Rashid for one? Brother Rashid, go for it. What's on your mind?
Because this concerns me. Do you believe I should be put to death?
I believe that the punishment for apostasy in a correct Islamic state is death. I believe that that's the correct... Let me finish. Let me just respond, sir. I believe that that is the correct punishment which has been revealed by God both in the Quran and the Bible. And for Robert to turn around
I asked you...
Let me finish.
I asked you, do you believe I should be killed today?
And I answered you, sir.
Yes or no?
I answered you.
Yes or no?
I answered you.
I think he said yes.
You want me to answer?
I said.
Yeah, you answered me.
In a proper Islamic jurisdiction, an Islamic nation, all of the laws of Islam and the Sharia as revealed by God should be applied.
So if we were in that kind of state, would you do it?
Including
I'm not the one that executes
with proper due process, with a proper court hearing, just like any nation of laws. The laws of the Sharia should be applied, including the death penalty for not only apostates, but also blasphemers.
You didn't answer me, yes or no?
We did answer
Yes, we did answer.
Yeah, so I should be killed.
We did answer.
I deserve to be killed because I left Islam and became a Christian.
According to Islamic law, an apostate like you would be killed. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And according to the Bible
let me. This is a fallacy.
And a blasphemer.
Here you just heard it boldly and blatantly.
This is a fallacy.
Robert,
too cockney. Like you want to say you have it too. It's a fallacy.
No.
Let us discuss this because
why is it a fallacy?
It's a fallacy. Let me finish. Please
condemn Jesus.
Yeah.
Please.
You think you should?
Robert
Robert already condemned him. So
No, you're lying.
Let me
Let's
finish.
be on
let me
record
finish.
saying you're lying
That's
about that.
Let me finish.
That's what happened.
Let's-
You said
let's-
eventually we realized you
You're lying.
Just let me finish. You
Let's hear
converted.
Brother Rashid, and then I'll come to you. Go for
You
it.
converted from Christianity to Islam. Your life is not under threat here in the U.S. I converted from Islam to Christianity. My life is under death. That's the difference between Christianity and Islam.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Yes.
That's the entire 5% that the West is that should be very concerned about.
I got a question for you guys. I'm a data guy. I'm a finance guy. How many Christians have died going from being Christian to Muslim? How many Muslims have actually been killed or died going from being a Muslim to a Christian?
There's no data on that because these kinds of things are not recorded. They're not considered crime.
There should be,
in
though, right? I
Islam.
mean, shouldn't there even if there's some stories to be able to say,
Yes.
XYZ individual.
I have stories. I have one in Mauritania. He was condemned to be executed. We just got him out to Paris because we negotiated with the government there. I have people right now in Libya. They are under death penalty in Libya. I have people who got killed in Jordan, for example, because I do my show. People contact me. I have people who got killed in Jordan. Their parents killed them because they became Christians from a Muslim background. We have people in different places in the world, in the Muslim community, they kill them, and if they get to flee, that's the best outcome.
I got a question. So while I'm studying this, there's also Daniel said something very interesting where the guidelines of Quran is based on the jurisdiction of the government, meaning where you live, the religion is follow whatever the laws are of that nation. Meaning, you can correct me. I'm just giving you what I've looked into. Does this mean these rules apply no matter where you live? Is that across the board, or is it's more stricter in certain Muslim nations than other Christian nations?
Islam is to be applied forever on every place since the time of Muhammad until today. So Muslims are just seeking to be a majority one day, and if Muslims are majority today, these two brothers will witness my killing in front of people, and they will be happy cheering the crowds that I was killed. So Islam is to be.
If U.S. became majority Muslim today, you would be killed.
I will be killed. Sharia is to be applied everywhere, every time, and that's the biggest difference with Christianity, because Jesus came and he stopped the Old Testament. He stopped he didn't stone the lady who committed adultery. He said in the law, tooth for tooth, and he said, no, you turn the other cheek. Jesus stopped the Old Testament. They don't have a New Testament in Islam. They have worse than the Old Testament. They have something that Muhammad never corrected. So today we have to do jihad. Today we have to kill the apostate. Today we have to kill the person who doesn't pray, even a Muslim. If he stops praying, he should be killed. If he has no excuse, he should be killed according to Islam.
I'd like to give them a chance.
I just want to say that this is the last comment about Christianity stopping the Old Testament is actually a huge tragedy. And as I explained earlier, he doesn't understand what the Old Testament, how the Old Testament works, which is why he says what he says. And there are some major fallacies to turning the other cheek when people are killing your people, which is not the approach that the Torah takes, and God clearly tells us to do otherwise. But the greatest threat over here, of course, is Islam taking over and actually applying Sharia law and killing innocent people.